Elections are coming up in just a few weeks, and candidates are either hoping to keep their seats or obtain a new one and represent a different type of community, commission boards, state representatives, or even judges. In this case of today, I have Josh Hilgart, who is from Kalamazoo, and he is hoping to become judge for the Ninth Circuit Court. While you're continuing to represent the underserved and low-income community, you're here today and you made the trip from Kalamazoo to Grand Rapids. So welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Edith. Super happy to be here.
Yeah. I want to get to know you a little bit more and let the community know you a little bit more. Basically, what your experiences have been before deciding to become judge.
Well, I was born and raised here in Southwest Michigan, in Kalamazoo. I went to law school here in Michigan at Michigan State University College of Law. I worked in Washington for a while, as we talked about, in Washington, D.C., but I came back to Kalamazoo in 2008, and I spent my time before my current role as a legal aid attorney helping the underserved here in Kalamazoo, which led to the founding of the Public Defender Office in Kalamazoo. And that's currently where I work. I run the Public Defender Office, which is a nonprofit there. And that brings me up as quickly as I can to the race now, where I'm seeking to bring some of the values that I put behind Public Defender Office into the courtroom.
Okay. And you mentioned you previously were at legal aid. So you were handling cases that ranged from fraud, divorces, child support, a little bit of everything, basically.
Yeah, legal aid it was a great opportunity to get to know the community in Kalamazoo that was really underserved. People who had been given the fewest advantages, had the least resilience, and were struggling against circumstances that were very harrowing. So as you said, people facing domestic violence, people facing losing their homes, their children. I was in family court, civil court. I even was in criminal court for expungements to try to clean people's records up so they could get a good start and not let their past keep them weighed down.
Yeah. And you also mentioned the Kalamazoo Defender, which is something that you created, and it's a nonprofit. What exactly does that organization do?
So Kalamazoo Defender is the public defender, as you said, for the county. What they do is represent criminal defendants, people who have been accused by the state of a crime who can't afford an attorney. And this population comes from the same communities that a lot of the legal aid clients came from. Most people don't realize almost everyone accused of a crime is poor. The way the system works, they're more easily policed, they're kind of more exposed and under scrutiny through social programs. The likelihood of receiving a charge if you're poor is much higher. As I said, we handle all cases in Kalamazoo where people can't afford an attorney. And for felonies, that means 90% of all cases. For misdemeanors where there is a danger of jail time, probably about 80% of all cases. So, so we handle almost all criminal cases in Kalamazoo and provide a defense to those people charged by the state with a crime.
Okay. Why did you decide to open this organization up? Was there a need, or was there anything like it before?
No. So interestingly, Kalamazoo had no public defender. Instead, the court used a roster system. That's one where they had a list of attorneys that they would have on hand when cases came through. We handle 5,000 cases a year, so very many cases just got farmed out to a dozen or so attorneys, who held the bulk of it by the county. But that system was found unconstitutional by the state Supreme Court here in Michigan. the way they worked. And so that created an opportunity for the state to change its system and provide localities with some funding to create a more fair and equitable system. Kalamazoo went above and beyond, while most counties just changed the pay structure and some of the availabilities of expert witnesses and investigators for the existing systems. Kalamazoo opted to offer the opportunity to handle all indigent defense by a nonprofit that would have to bid for the work from the county. And Kalamazoo Defender is that model. It's a nonprofit. It's not a government agency.
Okay, I think it's great because it's kind of like how you mentioned, you're connecting more with like the low income community, the people that don't really have the funds to get somebody to defend them, and everyone deserves to have that in the court. So I think that's great, and I congratulate you for opening that up. You said that there wasn't any like it before, so that's awesome.
No, and thanks, Edith. What really distinguishes it, I think, other than the fact that it's exceptional legal representation. We hired the best attorneys available. We sought and fought for good benefits and high salaries so we could attract good talent and retain good talent, so people got the best attorneys. But my experience at Legal Aid and working with the communities that are struggling, I realized that there are common problems, housing security, mental health issues that come from the trauma of poverty and racism, that these things were commonalities among our clients at Legal Aid and among our clients at the Defender Office, and that this is true of a large portion of our community. And creating services and compassionate engagement using social workers and coordinating community services is necessary if you really want to get someone out of the rut of running into court again, because it's so easy to get caught up there. And we really want our clients to succeed. We're not just trying to argue in court their best defense, which is what they're entitled to under the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, but to go one step further and say, these are human beings from our community. They're our neighbors. They're our community. They are a people to whom we owe the responsibility as anyone in our community to lift up, to hold up with respect and love, and figure out how can we help them. And so this is a great opportunity. I saw the offer to create this nonprofit in the county as an opportunity to create what would improve the lives of so many people who currently are generally regarded as they're criminal defendants. They're why don't and have the opportunity to kind of wrap our arms around them and maybe see them as something more.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that there's more resources available at the office. So you mentioned the one floor of this and one floor of that. So you also mentioned that there's mental health services, there's housing services, the ability to help them find jobs, all of that stuff. So that's cool that everything is just at one spot and easily accessible for them.
That is one thing that makes it unique. So that the model of having services alongside criminal defense is called the holistic public defender. And there are a handful of those around the country, and they're growing. It's obviously the way to go. It is I would say, the only pragmatic way to deal with this and humanitarian way to deal with this population. But Kalamazoo Defender is unique, I believe, in the nation in bringing all those services into the office so that our clients who, again, are not resilient, they're, having to go to 10 different places and take the bus all over town, tell their same traumatic story again and again to different providers, and then have those providers somehow understand what each other is doing, is really not a very effective way of delivering that care. So at Kalamazoo Defender, we raised money. As we said, we have one floor of a law firm. We have 28 attorneys. We have a staff of 50 in total. We have social workers and over 5,000 clients a year. We have that law firm on one floor, and on the second floor, we have rented out a great deal of space that we give for free to existing service providers that you just mentioned, so they can work together as a team. It really is a unique model. We call it the village. It's a village of different providers that range from, kind of official places like DHHS, which is in the next couple of months looking to move in. This program just got fully launched. And the local community college that provides job training. And we have about 24 different partners. Even the local public library has a spot on the floor.
Okay, that's super cool. Like I said, it's something unique how you mentioned, and I think that's a great opportunity for those that are low income, that don't have those resources, that it's actually available there. And just learning a little bit more and reading on the news and all of that about violent cases that have been happening in Kalamazoo, I've seen that there has been a little increase going on in that city as well. And I kind of believe juveniles are also being involved in these criminal cases, so they probably vary from armed robberies or even shootings, drive-bys, whatever the case may be, but juveniles are being involved more and more. As a judge, would you be considering a harder punishment for these juveniles or underage criminals?
No, it's an interesting question because it is true there is an uptick in some serious crime, although that seems to have leveled off in the last few months, and hopefully
it continues that way.
It continues that way, and the crime rates are much lower than kind of those record crime rates in 92 and 93. So it's important to keep things in perspective, and then crime rates for non-serious crime is at a low right now, and it's important not to become alarmed or afraid of our neighbors too much, I think. But yes, there was an uptick, and particularly concerning, was the young age of many of these perpetrators. And I think that there are a number of factors you have to look at. There's a question of protecting the community. So if you have someone who is a threat to the community that at this current point, you can't guarantee is not going to possibly harm someone, and separating them out from the community, in a juvenile detention center, or ideally not with an adult population, because these are not adults and they have unformed brains, and that's why we have separate systems, and our laws are structured to separate things out. But there's separating them from the community to keep the community safe. But I think that anyone, who is a youth that we're looking at that is engaging in these behaviors calls out for two things. One, and this is pertinent to the role I would play as judge, is how do you make sure that this person's trajectory gets shifted back on a course that's going to be productive for them and everybody else. You don't want a 16-year-old to go to prison forever. That is not good for society. That's not a good solution. That we really have to struggle to figure out how we can help this person, and it's a cry for help at that age, I think, if they're engaging in this serious behavior. And the second thing, which is outside of my scope as judge, is us as a society saying, what did we do to let the community in which that child grow up down, letting down that community so that that child reached a point of hopelessness that they thought that engaging in this behavior at that age was appropriate.
Okay, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I've heard so many different perspectives from the community. They're either saying, yes, sentence them for a longer time and maybe they'll stop doing it, but then we also have to think about where is that coming from and why are they acting that way, or why are they doing this kind of stuff. So it's interesting that you said that. Another thing I wanted to see of what your thoughts are on, we previously spoke about this before the interview, but it's about the changes that Jennifer Granholm did when she was governor. Basically, for the inmates that had a less severe case and had a good behavior, they were able to get let out probably earlier than their sentencing dates, which reduced the cost for the corrections and reduced the population. What are your thoughts on that, even though you weren't, a judge or anything at that time, but what are your thoughts on what she did during that time?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of nonviolent people in our prison systems and in our jails. And, as one thing that, is interesting about Kalamazoo is that it kind of pioneered some diversion programs. It had a drug treatment program that started 30 years ago. It was one of the first in the nation. Okay. We actually had the first women's drug court in the nation. And subsequent programs have been developed that divert people from incarceration. I think it makes sense to, incarceration is a very traumatic thing. It creates a trauma in people that studies have shown, really undermine their ability to be, again, using the word resilience, their capacity to live life, without trauma after incarceration is somewhat diminished by incarceration. So it's a very serious tool. And sometimes, it has to be used again to keep the community safe, to keep people away from the community who might cause harm. But we want to use that sparingly. And where there's an opportunity to work with an individual that maybe, just needs some help and attention and really hasn't gotten that in recent years or at all during their lives, to treat addiction. That's better than incarceration in my view. And so I applauded that move to get nonviolent people released. And I would advocate for, when possible, not incarcerating people who are not a threat to the community. We want to help them out. We want to make sure that they can find their way back into the community. And I'll just say one quick thing too about you had indicated, there's also sentencing guidelines, which is an issue that you're interested in. There are guidelines that require, you can deviate from the guidelines if you've got a reason to. But the guidelines are that. They give you a kind of ballpark of what the legislators expected courts to do. And so if you have a repeat offense for using a drug, just being caught with a tiny amount of use, by the fourth time you get arrested for meth, even if you're not selling it, you're looking at years in prison. And I think a question that we need to ask ourselves is, is that a good approach? If someone is trapped in a cycle of a very addictive drug, then is our position to induce, again, more trauma with incarceration? It is very traumatic. Or are we compassionate with someone who has a medical problem and has maybe lost the kind of hope and resolve to be able to kick that habit on their own, and they need some help? And so it becomes a complicated question. Sentencing guidelines, releasing people who are nonviolent. I would reiterate that I see incarceration, as a way of protecting the community, and that there are a whole suite of tools for nonviolent criminals to be able to integrate back into society, and that should be a priority.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for your thoughts, and thank you for kind of explaining that, because like I mentioned before, just a few minutes ago, there are so many people that just think differently. They want to go towards the harsher punishments, and we never really think about drugs being a whole medical issue. It's just more of they were caught with drugs, let's just send them to jail. So it's interesting that you approached it that way and the way that you think.
Well, and I want to say I have sympathy for the point of view of people who've committed crimes. They're violating the standards of our community. These are enacted by people in Lansing, who we have elected to create laws so we have an orderly society, so our kids are not around people who are addicted to drugs, and our kids are, I understand that point of view, the anger that people have with those who violate the law, there may be a visceral kind of, why are you bringing down our community by just ignoring these laws? And if we don't hold you accountable, then, you know, where does it end? And I want to be clear that I understand holding people accountable and treating them with dignity are not mutually exclusive. That you can treat a community with dignity and compassion while also understanding that your job is to be able to enforce the laws, to uphold the laws. And I think that that can be done. You know, again, it's what tool is the right tool for the situation. And also being careful as a judge that my job is not to impose my own personal judgment on someone, my anger for them, my feelings on them, or society's anger on someone. My job is to hold people accountable to the law, and I believe as a public servant to treat them, because they are also my constituent, with dignity and compassion even when I hold them accountable. So I don't want people to think I'm not soft on crime. Indeed, you know, I think the best way to combat crime is to get people out of a criminal cycle before it gets worse. Because frankly, and I think this needs to be stated with clarity, people who go to prison get out unless they have committed a very serious capital felony. We call them capital, even though we don't have the death penalty in Michigan. If it's a life term, there are very few people sentenced to life. There are many felonies that bring people into prison, and those people will get out. And who do we want walking back out into our streets? We want to think about that not with anger and resentment. We want to think about that logically, thoughtfully, because they're going to be in our neighborhoods again. And we want people in our neighborhoods who are going to be able to function with our children without causing us anxiety.
Yeah, that's interesting. A good point of view that you have. And then just that kind of brought me to the criminal records and the expungements that you have worked with before. Something that really stands out for me is the marijuana cases, because back then it used to be illegal and then it turned legal. So now we have people that have criminal records that involve all of this, and you know, they're struggling to find a house, they're struggling to find a job. So what are your thoughts on the changes that there has been, so allowing people to have that criminal record expungement?
Well, I think it's great. I mean, and so many of the people that move through our criminal justice system make mistakes and they move on with their lives. So I've helped people with expungements who are training to be nurses, school teachers, even school bus drivers, you know, people who want to, they are moving on with their lives, their education they've received, they have convictions from long ago, oftentimes marijuana, and those convictions are holding them up from just being adults and moving on. So that's always a satisfaction when you're able to get an expungement for someone in that situation. And then it's very grateful that the expungement law changed in Michigan recently, so that it is still not automatic, although it's some charges will become automatic, which is also a good addition. But it's almost nearly automatic to get one if you have a marijuana offense. You can petition to remove that with very few barriers, because it really is inequitable to have people walking around, especially black and brown people who were disproportionately charged with marijuana and convicted with marijuana charges. And now, as you say, it's legal, so those charges still create a criminal record that is holding people back and unreasonably, I would say. And I would also mention our office at the Defender, the Village, the suite of services, includes an expungement program that's run by Michigan Works, the employment aid agency in Michigan. The Kalamazoo office has provided a staff person who, through their Clean Slate program, to process expungements on our floor as well. We're very excited and pleased to be able to bring that service to the community.
Okay, that's cool. And just my last few questions, or my last couple of questions, is why are you running for judge, and why do you believe that the community should vote for you?
Well, I'm running for judge because I think Kalamazoo creates a great opportunity to set the standard for the nation and how to approach the criminal justice system, the population that moves through it, with social science, pragmatic solutions that have been shown to work, and really changing how we think about processing criminal justice. Criminal defendants are human beings that are in need of our support 9 times out of 10. They are people who are struggling with mental health, people who are in dire situations, and Kalamazoo has a history of recognizing that with our specialty courts and taking some of the lessons learned from the Defender Office and working with the current judiciary for the next generation of programs in the courts could really define the best method for dealing with criminal defense issues.
Okay. And you mentioned that you do have some competitors, so what makes you stand out from the others, I guess we could say?
Well, I think the biggest thing is my why for running, that I really do believe that there is a status quo that can be improved upon.
Okay.
That we have opportunity to create that kind of program. I do believe that the other folks running for circuit court includes people who are, honest and decent and kind, trustworthy, but I don't know that they would be as proactive in trying to create new opportunities and to push the county to explore new territory to the degree that I would.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you for being here. If there's anything that I missed or anything that you want the community to know, please feel free to, you could say it. So I'm not sure if I missed anything.
No, this was a great interview, Edith. I really appreciate your time and your questions, and honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting us get to know you a little bit more, let the community know a little bit more about you. And I also want to invite people, if they're able to vote, you can visit michigan.gov/vote to see if you're registered, or to obtain your absentee ballot, which is easier to vote. You can vote from home now. And if you want to learn more about Josh himself, you can visit hilgart4judge.com, and you can visit his Facebook page at Josh Hilgart for Judge, and that's the word for FOR written out. Thank you for joining us. If you want more interviews in English or Spanish, you can visit our website at elvocerous.com, our YouTube page at El Vocero Hispano TV, and our Facebook page at El Vocero Hispano.